First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast, back with you. Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski. We're inside the Wall Center, the Go-Goat Sports Studios. Looking forward to catching a C's Vancouver Canadians nooner with Sakaris and Price and the boys later this week. But Nick, good to be down here.
Yeah, feeling good. Sun shining today. Starting to feel like summer a bit. It's creeping up.
Yeah, for the next hour or so, I think the weather looks...
Did you see the weather this weekend coming up?
Yeah, it's like shorts and flip-flops kind of thing, right?
Yeah, so summer's coming.
All right.
Calling it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit last week with Neil McAvoy previewing the CFL draft and talking about how really it's on now. 2 weeks from now, we'll be making the drive up to Kamloops. First years on the field May 10th, veterans in a couple of days after that. Was talking to Vernon Adams Jr. yesterday. He's actually going up May the 9th, so he'll be there before the first years. Won't be doing any on-field stuff, but the quarterbacks and such, sometimes they like to get up there, get together, watch a little film. Can't take part in any on-field activities, technically, I don't think, but it's good to kind of be there and be accustomed and
check out the view.
Yeah, like you're already looking for... We're going to go hiking at some point, I think, right?
For sure, yeah. Running back like we did last year.
Well, hopefully we won't have as much time on our hands, because that hike we did last year was right when the strike started, right?
We only did it because there was, a strike.
We were kind of, we're not going to drive home because they could settle by the time we get to Merritt or something, but...
So we're going to park at the Home Depot.
So we park at the Home Depot and
head up a hill.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamie Cartmill, the previous Lions communications director, and in fact, original host on this podcast, first and now original co-host with myself. He taught me that. You just park at the Home Depot and the world is your oyster. The trail is there. And yeah, I mean, beautiful British Columbia, the license plates don't lie, and Kamloops, very much looking forward to being a part of it. BCLions.com, you can find the full training camp schedule, practice, everything. FanFest is back Saturday, May the 20th, May long weekend. Always good to see some great fans coming from all over the province, not just Kamloops and the Lower Mainland. Kamloops kind of a good hub for that, and you get the smell of hot dogs and burgers in the air, perhaps pop a beer or two once all our work is done, and one of the more exciting days on the calendar. But we are recording this episode inside of a week until the CFL draft. We talked a little bit more about that last week with co-GM Neil McAvoy. Be sure to go and check out and download that episode. Plenty of possibilities. The Lions with 7 picks over 8 rounds, including 9th overall in round 1 from the Jordan Williams trade. But roster building is the theme now, and we're going to go over some camp battles before we're done today. We're going to hear from Stefan Flintoft, Lions punter, in a few minutes' time. But kind of rounding out the roster, made a few additions last week. Jalen McLean-Sapp and Trey Webb, a couple of defensive backs. These guys, not unlike any other first-year Americans, a little bit of NFL camp experience, but really going to be coming up to learn the Canadian game and be part of those position battles. Another running back, Nick. Again, this keeps getting more interesting.
Yeah.
Raymond Calais, a draft pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020. That, of course, was the year they would win the Super Bowl with Leonard Fournette as the feature guy. But he was, Calais talking about, didn't come out of camp that year, but was immediately picked up by the LA Rams, got some action on special teams, earned a Super Bowl ring on the practice squad. So again, potentially 6 American running backs going to be coming to camp here, and we'll maybe get into some of these battles right now because I kind of teed it up, but running back is kind of really what everyone is going to have their eyes on as far as who emerges on the roster and at the top of the depth chart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the running back battle is by far the number one training camp battle on this BC Lions team heading into camp. On the note of Calais, in our podcast notes that we prep, you wrote speed. And referred to what Ryan Rigg made and called Calais, and I was intrigued by that, so I Googled Calais, and a punt return for the LA Rams showed up, and he's got speed. I actually even Googled his 40 time from his scout profile, and it was 4.42, which in the CFL is fast. So he's potential to be the fastest guy on the team if he ends up cracking the roster. But to go to the running back battle, with losing James Butler in free agency, it's wide open. And Rick Campbell's talked about that. Neil McAvoy's talked about that. The team is truly going with the mindset that there's 6 guys, 7 guys. Who knows? May come the drafts next week. They could add there. Who knows who's going to be there? But yeah. So there's all these running backs, and the job is equal, like to earn it. And it's by far, in my mind, the number one battle heading into camp to look out for.
Yeah, and again, all the roster breakdown at bclions.com, but Ryan Rigby, he sent me a note to give me the heads up that we signed Calais, and the other guy we did that day was Cole Blackman, the wide receiver, and he's just like, more speed today. You can tell. It's awesome when you get Rigmaiden talking about some of these players that they've brought in. Blackman, by the way, was invited to the Atlanta free agent camp. So, again, you never know. These free agent camps, more often than not, at the very least, bring about maybe 1 or 2 guys you bring to training camp, maybe put on the neg list, and they come next year. So, and we'll be in Seattle this coming weekend for the final U.S. free agent camp. Some Arrow Up content. We'll talk a bit more about that later. So, yeah, running back, obviously, I mean, it kind of goes without saying. You lose a guy in James Butler who was the top running back as far as yards from scrimmage.
Total yards, yeah.
Second in the CFL to Kadeem Carey, it was, right? But again, the exciting part for me is that's a guy 2 years ago. No one knew who he was. He was just a name on a depth chart coming to camp without much experience because he had to go back to 2019 when John White was the Lions feature back, along with Brandon Rutley, who battled some injury problems. So really, outside of 2022, last year, running back has been kind of a question, really, since Andrew Harris left in 2015.
Yeah, and one more note on the running back position, too, is there's a guy like David Mackey. I think he doesn't really get considered enough. When we saw it last season when James Butler got injured against Toronto, Mackey comes in and almost rushes for 100 yards. So he proved there that he's capable of handling some carries. And I'm sure as the season goes on, he will be involved in the run game still. And he's also someone who's Canadian, too, so provides flexibility at that spot. So he's someone also to consider in terms of maybe not starting a whole season there. Obviously, a fullback is his primary position, but getting some carries here and now.
Yeah, you mentioned that as well. Got him involved a little bit in the offense as a receiver, too, not just out of the backfield. Wide receiver, of course, the big story here, Brian Burnham retired, long, great career, and we'll miss just having him around as a guy to talk to and say hi to. I mean, his on-field production spoke for itself, but potentially a 5th wide receiver spot up for grabs here. Of course, free agency brought about Justin McInnis, Canadian. So again, you talk about ratio flexibility. Alexander Hollins, a guy when called upon, contributed big touchdown in the playoff win over Calgary. And then, of course, there's the training camp aspect. You saw a couple of these new guys down in Tacoma at Vernon Adams Jr.'s camp. Was it Jake Lampman was one of them?
Jake Lampman and Justice Murphy.
Justice Murphy, the 2 J's. So, again, these guys they've got a lot to prove coming to their first CFL camp, and who emerges on the roster, we shall see.
Then there's guys like Josh Pearson, Jamarius Way, who are recovering from injuries suffered last season, too, or come back to camp this season. And this is a spot, too, where the team has tons of flexibility. They can go Canadian with McInnis, they can go American with Hollins, or they can really decide game by game who they want to go with. It's a really interesting battle in that aspect, too, because the team has to maneuver it as well with the ratio.
Yep. Offensive line, always very important. Again, have to replace a Joel Figueroa. A guy was a soldier for 4 or 5 years, starting left tackle, but again, went down with some injuries toward the end of the year, and Jarrell Broxton stepped in. We also have Philip Norman, David Neville, a guy who couldn't play a down last year. I mean, that was a big year for him. That was going to be huge for him last year, and ultimately he lost it due to injury, torn labrum in his shoulder, and they thought enough of him to re-sign him and bring him to camp, see what can happen. But some Canadian depth. We've talked a lot about this Canadian depth, Nick, getting better. The offensive line is a prime example. Andrew Pearson can play guard. He can play center if he needs to. Noah Zur, Tyler Packer, draft picks from the past couple of years. I think Packer, was it Zur or Packer that got in at the end in Winnipeg? Was Tyler Packer, I believe. So
Zur did as well, actually, in the fourth quarter.
They both got in at various points of the season. So still a little raw, ready to be starters yet. Remains to be seen, but you look at them, they get another offseason to get ready. there's options there.
Yeah, and there's always an extra offensive lineman spot that goes on the roster too. And I think when you speak of this depth, it also is a testament to Kelly Bates and the coaching that he's implemented with these guys, the development he has working with these guys. I know the players speak very highly of Coach Bates and the coaching he provides to them. So that's going to be another one that's going to be really interesting to watch, just because it's typically in training camp, offensive line is maybe the most physical position group in general. And now with these spots up for grabs, the intensity should only rise up throughout camp.
Yeah, and they're all good guys. The offensive linemen, funny guys.
They get along really well. It's a really tight knit group.
And Kelly Bates is jacked up to have a whole stable of guys to be battling for these spots. Moving to the defensive side of things, cornerback specifically. Remember Delvin Breaux, great guy, been on the podcast. Surprise free agent edition. Unfortunately, got injured and really didn't get his job back because there's a lot of options back there. Jalen Edwards-Cooper going into year number 3. Signed some veteran presence in Mike Jones, a former Grey Cup champion in Winnipeg, who you're familiar with. So those are just a couple of names to keep in mind. If there is a starter's spot up for grabs, Edwards-Cooper started there. They did go Canadian at that spot with Akeem Johnson a couple times. He, of course, has left via free agency. So I think it's safe to say it will be an American going there, but we do have Adrian Green coming back. Draft pick, again, that Canadian content getting better and better. Guys in the mix for spots. Worth an eye on this battle. Yeah,
and then also there's the training camp newcomers aspect. Last year we saw Emmanuel Rugamba and Quincy Mauger step up and make the team, right? Quincy made it from day one, and Rugamba stepped in halfway through the season. So there's also a fact that these new signees that we're seeing coming up through these past months, they can win that spot. We don't even know their potential yet, but that's the beauty of training camp, right?
Yeah. And speaking of Rugamba, he sort of emerged as the go-to spot at Sam linebacker. But if we're talking safeties here for just a minute, Quincy Mauger, I've seen some footage of him working. He looks jacked now. Yeah. He's put on some muscle. I saw him work. He was working out with Gary Peters.
Down in Atlanta, yeah. So Quincy Mauger was someone who started week 1 at safety last season.
Yep.
And he got banged up in a practice, which ultimately, ironically, led to Rugamba's emergence into the lineup. And then ultimately, Mauger didn't make it back into the lineup. I think he got back for one game against Calgary. The Vernon Adams started against Calgary. Quincy dressed and played.
He did,
but he's back for year 2. There's a safety spot open with Luches Purifoy moving on to the Elks now. And again, there's Mauger's in the mix. There's training camp newcomers that we don't know of. I mean, the draft is coming up in a week. There's a lot of options for safety this year, and that's another position to just keep an eye on.
What I like most about this, guys who can play multiple spots. I mean, Rugamba came in, halfback, maybe a little safety in the NFL. But
Bola Cumbo's played safety too. I just popped my mind.
In Montreal, he was a safety, right? That 1 year in Montreal, 2019. Whenever that was, 2019, 2021, somewhere in there. And that's, again, just because you see a guy, he's on a depth chart somewhere else. Not necessarily the case. You have to be versatile. And speaking of versatility, long snapper, Tanner Dahl, ultimately not signed in free agency, remains a free agent, but I think I can't say this for sure. I'm guessing that was more of an economical decision more than anything else, because guys were getting signed and guys were, getting restructured, but you have to cut somewhere. And this is an open, like linebacker, this is an open competition. Might not be as intriguing or exciting for the average fan, but long snapping is an important thing. It's one of those things you never think about. So Tanner Dahl's not back, but there are a couple candidates that will be able to fill the void.
You only think about long snapping when it goes wrong.
Exactly.
That's how important it is. And we'll talk with Stefan Flintoft about how important it is to have a new long snapper this season. But free agent signing Dylan St. Pierre. He's a Canadian player. He's a fullback on the depth chart, but he's also someone with long snapping capabilities. And the global, Jan Levi Cruza.
Yep.
He can long snap too. So those are two candidates right there. Again, the team can bring in more candidates throughout training camp. There's a draft as well. So it's like you said, it's an important spot that not many think about, but when you notice it when it's bad, and it's the long snapper's job just to repeatedly do the job properly and not get noticed.
Long snappers make hilarious guys too.
Yeah.
Tanner, before that we had Mike Benson here for a couple of years.
Yeah.
One of the best guys, one of the best personalities in the league, still going strong with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and got himself a Grey Cup ring in 2021. So those are just a little taste of some of the battles we're excited to look forward to. Of course, we will be chronicling it in Kamloops, daily video, hard-hitting reports again. Looking forward to do those. Maybe I'll drive the Gator again during one of those.
Yeah, we gotta think of some more entrance ideas for you.
Let's get creative this time.
Lucky does it for home games, and you do it in Kamloops.
And props to the City of Kamloops and Sun Peaks Resort, our training camp video sponsors as well. Love it. Stefan Flintoft, again, came in here a couple years ago, just a name on a depth chart. Remember, going into 2021, we had Jake Ford, the Australian global first overall pick. Ultimately, Flintoft became the punter middle of that season, and we'll talk about his journey from UCLA all the way up here. The football world is small. He's trained before with Ty Long, another former Lions kicker, so we'll get some good Ty Long stories, I hope, and that and more coming up on First and Now with Stefan Flintoft. All right, and we've tracked him down. Best hair in the CFL, at least as far as punters go. Flint, how does that sound?
I don't know anymore. I cut it all off a few weeks ago.
You cut your hair? I thought you must have been wearing a hat or something when I saw you last.
Yeah, no, I had to chop it all off. It was time. It was definitely time.
It's funny. I'm just for old time's sake, I'm just looking at your headshot on our website, which you'll have to take a new one in a couple of weeks' time. The best part of training camp, I know, but yes, the long hair, the wave, the California hairstyle is no more, at least for now. But we appreciate you stopping by here. Getting close. Nick and I were talking off the top about we're pretty much 2 weeks away from making the beautiful drive up to Kamloops. Must feel like Christmas for you, right?
Yeah, no, it kind of came out of nowhere. You know, the off season's weird like that. It's super slow in the beginning, and then it kind of speeds up, and then all of a sudden you're here. So I'm excited though.
How has it been for you? You're one of a handful of guys who stuck around town, I think, at least for the most part. I mean, how much have you liked becoming more of a local around in the off season?
It's been great. I wanted to do it last year, but didn't get the chance to. So I went home for the holidays and then came back up, and I've been here since the beginning of February, and it's been awesome. Just a great group of guys training together at the facility. You know, I think there's like probably 9 to 12 in that window. And yeah, it's just, I mean, I love it. I love it up here.
So you first came north ahead of the 2021 season, and a bit of a battle for you. Remember, we were talking about how Jake Ford had just come from the global draft, and you worked with him, competed with him. What do you remember most about that process of your first camp and ultimately winning a roster spot at the end?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it was pretty crazy from the second we landed in Kamloops. That's when all the fires were really terrible. So we kind of landed into like an apocalyptic setting, which was just, perfect for my first pro camp. So, but then got there and, knew I was going to have some competition, just, going to have some competition every year. And it was nothing new to me. But yeah, got P squadded towards the end of camp, and that was somewhat of a blow at first. It took a couple days to accept it, and I was still part of the team. I still had a chance, and then once I accepted that, I just kind of kept the head down and the blinders on, and just waited for my opportunity.
I always like to ask the new Americans this too. When they come into the CFL, like what did you even know about the league heading into it, and when did you realize that was a destination for you and for your pro career?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to share an agent, or I still am, to share an agent with Ty Long. So he told me kind of just the general timeline. It's like, first shoot for NFL opportunities. And if nothing comes that first season, then we can immediately switch our sights to the CFL. And it's another great opportunity. So I knew, a decent bit about it. Obviously, the COVID year, because I signed like right before COVID happened. Um, so I had that whole year just to kind of learn the ropes from Ty's experience, and then also Richie Leone. Um, and yeah, so that year was definitely very helpful, just in getting the general foundation of the CFL in my mind. So it wasn't too foreign to me once I got up here.
Obviously, the biggest adjustment I would assume for you as a punter would be the field size. So when you're training down in America, are you just like working with a bigger field, or how did that work?
Yeah, so some fields were just like sports complexes, so they had the soccer field sidelines. Um, so I would just use those instead of the football lines. But if we were on like a high school football field, I would have to aim out towards the track, just to add that extra width to the field there. But it was easy to work around. Yeah.
How did you when did you really get accustomed to the different field size up in Canada?
Honestly, not until camp, because you can try to simulate it and just visualize a wider field, but until you're standing right in the middle of one, and you're looking to each side of you, it kind of looks like an ocean out there. But at the end of the day, give it a day or two, and it's just a football field. You get used to it pretty quickly.
You mentioned Richie Leone and Ty Long, two solid ex-Lions. Richie, of course, still going strong in Ottawa. The football world really is small, but just talk about how training with Ty and a bunch of guys down in LA. Of course, Ty was a member of the Chargers at that time, I believe.
Mhm.
What did he tell you in terms of preparing to play up here, Stefan?
Yeah, so the good thing was I had him, I had Richie there, then a handful of NFL guys. So it was really just that group training. It's just so different, because you're competing with a handful of guys on a daily basis. So you kind of always have to be on, and it's tough to be the best guy on the field when you're training with a high caliber of punters and kickers, NFL and top CFL guys. So it really got those competitive juices flowing. But then on down days when we weren't necessarily competing, I was able just to kind of pick their brains, Ty and Richie, and just see what type of punts they would do in certain situations, certain spots on the field, and then also too, it's just the punting in the CFL is very different to American football. There's no fair catches. There's the halo, so that offers different types of punts. You want to get the ball on the ground, all those things. So I was just able to pick their brains and just see those little differences, those rule differences, and then apply them, right there and then on the field. So it was a pretty optimal training place,
The
situation.
the other big difference up here compared to UCLA and the Pac-12 is the weather. I know
Yeah.
we didn't go to Hamilton last year, but we would have been there in October of your first year, I think, and
Yeah.
a couple times in Saskatchewan, even Calgary. The wind and all that, playoff games in Winnipeg. How big of an adjustment was that for you at first?
So the wind, I'm not I've dealt with wind. And two, all those training days, I spent 2 years in Birmingham, Alabama, so definitely
Hmm.
a different climate than the West Coast. Um, but really, the only weather I hadn't already witnessed was snow. I'd never played a snow game up until this past season in Winnipeg, so that was definitely an experience. I had to kind of just adjust on the fly. Um, but but no, the win games are the win games. It's just it's a pregame. You got to find out in pregame.
Right.
So you just go out there, see what the wind's doing, and it's all if you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy adjustments, and then you just got to commit to those come game time. But I love playing all throughout Canada. You get those different stadiums, different climates. It just keeps things interesting for a rather monotonous position. So yeah, it just adds some fun to it at the end of the day.
Before you headed up to the Canada for your first season, did Ty and Richie, did they have any stories like, oh, you're going to go to this place called Regina and they're going to have watermelons on their heads, or you're going to go to Montreal and there's going to be these air horns playing all game? Is there anything like that you remember?
Yeah, definitely the Montreal air horns, and then I don't even know what you would call them, but the horns in Hamilton. They're
The
I mean,
vuvuzela type things.
yeah,
Yeah.
like one's like a higher pitched one, and I think they crank it. Um, that was I definitely heard Hamilton fans are something else. So props to them. They have a lot of pride in their organization. But yeah, it's nothing I hadn't seen before. Football fans are football fans. They're all cut from the same cloth. Um, and playing at UCLA, you got to deal with SC fans every year, and that's always a loud game for sure.
Before I let Nick continue, I have to correct it. Montreal horn, singular.
Yes.
Many people don't know. That's
one
one fan. That's one fan with one horn behind the bench.
Yep.
When you're watching it on TV, it's easy to think it's multiple because the thing's loud and it's annoying. But I tell people this, they don't believe it. It's one horn.
I have video evidence, actually.
Yeah, as do I.
Yeah.
So there you go. Continue.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of tweets about it this year. Complaints from people watching on TV. They were complaining about the horns. I don't know. I think it's a great part of the game. We got fans for a reason. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we got our drums too. Yeah. But
yeah,
Stefan,
our drum corner is great. Those guys, they're insane. Full body paint and everything. I love
them. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Big time.
Stefan, last season the bond in the locker room that became a big storyline throughout the CFL and the camaraderie this team had. So can you just describe the takeaways you had from last year's team chemistry and how you think it can grow this season?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we had a tight locker room my first season, but definitely much tighter this past year. I was pretty surprised because you hear stories of professional locker rooms, and especially football, there's so much like rollover, during a season especially. So I was shocked to see how close everyone was, and it was pretty immediate. Like once we got to camp, but the continuity definitely plays a huge role in that, and we're following that up again this year. So I'm super excited to see a lot of familiar faces. Now with 2 years under my belt, I have tons of pretty good relationships with my fellow teammates. Definitely a lot stronger than my first year when I was new. So I'm just excited, man. It's like you said, we're 2 weeks out. There's just this kind of switch that goes off in your head, and when you're this close to camp, and just can't wait to play ball again. So.
And then it's also year 2 with you and Sean White together as the kicker and punter combo. And just from being around you guys, you could tell that you guys clicked right off the bat. Just talk about the relationship you have with Sean.
Yeah, no, I mean, Sean coming last year was awesome. Just, a guy with, probably the most experience. I believe he's the longest current player, with 15 years of experience. I know he might not take that as too much of a compliment because it reflects his age, but he's got a ton of experience, and I learn a lot from him. He's always trying to coach me up. I'm pretty stubborn when it comes to my punting, so I might not take his coaching all the time, but I still hear it. And yeah, I think we just work well together. We got along right off the bat, and yeah, again, excited to continue working with them for another year. Super excited.
Similar to the last question too, there's a long snapper spot in training camp that's up for grabs. But I'm not going to ask you what the emergent needs to do on the field because I think it's pretty obvious they need to snap you the ball in a good manner. But what are you looking for in terms of a guy who can gel with you and Sean this season in terms of a long snapper?
You're gonna have to take some tough love. If you just heard us all talking to each other, you wouldn't think that we're all close friends. But that's if we're not talking smack, it means we don't like you. So that's just kind of part of the group, and Coach Yanowski's in on that too. So it's at the end of the day too. We spend so much time together on the field, in the meeting rooms, and so it's not a tough group to gel with. I think we're all relatively nice people. So
Yeah, Yano certainly a funny guy to be around, and can sort of tell you guys all feed off of that. And kind of bringing it full circle here, talking about experience and how you got here. You mentioned dealing with USC fans, Flint. What are some of your memorable experiences at UCLA? Whether it was a big game or maybe going into an environment like that. Anything come to mind? What's the first couple things?
yeah, I mean, honestly, that USC SC game, or sorry, UCLA SC game every year is kind of the only one that matters. It honestly, whatever your record is at the time, it's kind of out the door. You're 0-0 going into that game. But I want to say it was my first year I started playing, because it took me a couple. I walked on and then worked my way out onto the field and all that. And we were at the Rose Bowl. I believe there was around upper 80s. I want to say maybe 89,000. And the whole game I was punting to Adoree Jackson. And that was his final year in college. So a pretty daunting task, but it just, I kind of like that challenge. I like when every week we're facing the best returner of the league, and that's similar up here. Every team has a very high caliber returner. So it's just a good challenge. Again, like I was saying, with all the different punts, it just it adds some fun into it. It kind of becomes a game within the game. Just me versus the returners. And but yeah, no, there's just nothing like playing in that Rose Bowl when it's packed out. Nothing like it.
Yeah, that's on the list for me for sure to get to one of those. Like going to a Rose Bowl game would be kind of that'd be kind of cool for me. I don't know. Have you ever got to experience that even as a fan, Stefan? I'm not sure, but that looks like a good time.
Yeah, no, I've never been, but I think it seats 92,500. So, and they got every seat filled out. So it's quite the atmosphere.
We were talking about team chemistry and just how close the group is. I truly think that will translate. I mean, you see VA doing his camp down in Tacoma and a bunch of the guys showing up to hang out and get some time on field together. So everything's all systems go once we do get to Kamloops, the veterans on May 12th, May 13th. But how hungry are you to win and take another positive step this year, sir?
Yeah, I mean, we were one game away this past year. We got close. So there's just nothing like that playoff football. It was my first experience with it. And it's definitely an even bigger atmosphere than regular season, in those stadiums. It was really cool to do it in Winnipeg, to play that Western Conference game in Winnipeg. They got some loud fans. So that was a pretty exciting experience, but I'm just ready to get back in it with the guys. Like you're saying, everyone's gelling well, and that's a huge part, because then you're playing for each other rather than just, for a game check. So, that part is huge. And yeah, I'm hungry this year. The last couple of years I've been, close to the top of the league. If you're going in net, it's been like what, third and fourth, I think, first year to second year. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that top spot, and yeah, I'm just can't wait for it. Super excited.
Sound like a popular guy today too. What's going on there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to turn these notifications off, but I can't seem to figure that out.
Is that Sean White texting you?
Sean, yeah, we're figuring out our next kicking session. Yeah.
You guys get a chance to golf this offseason with you sticking around, or I'm sure you got the golfing in California when you went back home for the holidays, right?
Yeah, I got a handful of rounds in back home. I have yet to golf since I've been up here, though. So the sun that came yesterday has been pretty crucial. I got to get out there.
Mm-hmm. Mackie and Sean get a lot of attention as the team's best golfers, but do you consider yourself like a sleeper this year to take that crown at this year's golf tournament with the Lions?
I'd like to say I'm the third spot. Mackie and I, we've had some close battles. Sean and I, we've had a couple rounds when we were on the same team. We did a couple charity scramble tournaments this past year, and we worked pretty well together. Just like on the field. So hopefully we get more opportunities to do that. But there's definitely going to be a ton of golf rounds this year, and we're all keeping track of it because there's quite the prize at the end of it. So
There's a prize.
Yeah, we're all playing for a jacket this year. So just like the Masters, they got the green jacket. The BC Lions, we got the orange jacket. So
whose idea was that?
Bragging rights.
That sounds like a David Mackey idea, or am I wrong?
It might be hanging on the side of his locker. Yeah, he might be the one behind it.
We have to go capture this for sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, it'll be documented for sure.
And Mackey, he's married now, so I don't know if his golf days they're probably almost over. I don't know, but speaking from experience, who knows?
We'll
so
see. I
wouldn't
know.
The plaque and the jacket might be up for grabs. You never know. Listen, Flint, this was great. We'll let you go return all those messages here, and sorry it took this long to get you on. We'll have to do it again. As you're pursuing the punting lead in 2023 and beyond.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thanks, Stefan.
Great stuff with Stefan Flintoft. Just could talk with him all day. One of those guys, he's always in a good mood. He's never having a bad day. And you heard him. He's, you know what? It's team success ultimately is important, the most important, but I like hearing guys talking about their individual goals because it has an effect on the team. Mm-hmm. And he I think it was game 3 or 4 in 2021 where he took over. He ended up leading in net punting amongst those who qualify, third in that category. And he wants to be number 1 from week 1. And I love hearing that.
Yeah, and even the perspective he had where he said going against the team's top returner or like the best return in the league is something he looks forward to. That's a neat little tidbit from a punter's perspective. And the jacket, we got a jacket on the line in the golf tournament this year for the Lions. That's another tidbit.
Well, and that's another example of just how much fun these guys have as a group, and you really admire that. You learn to admire it. So yeah, we should have some fun with that for sure. So thank you to Stefan Flintoft for joining us. A few more minutes here before we wrap things up. We'll be back, a bit of a program, and I'm guessing we'll record next week after the draft. The CFL draft takes Tuesday, so we'll look to either get in here or do something where we can to recap that. But there are some other important days coming up. Most notably, want to talk about May 5th. Single game tickets go on sale. Season ticket packages available anytime at bclions.com, so you can head there if you want to break down some of that. The new family zone, kids get in for as little as $10 per game, 17 and under. Parents can join them for $20. You really can't beat that as far as a family price in town as far as sporting events goes. But May 5th, and perfect opportunity to maybe highlight a couple of our favorite themes. Of course, season opening kickoff, more on that as the days come, but we're just going to pick one here. I like the Gravy Bowl in October, Winnipeg in town. That's the Friday of...
That's the best name.
Yeah, but this could potentially become something. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but maybe an annual home game on that weekend.
I love that idea.
So, and something about October games, it could very much be first place on the line that night, Nick, or a playoff game at home. So, given the magnitude of where we are in the schedule, May 5th, if you're looking at a specific game or two, Gravy Bowl. Can't wait for that one.
Yeah, because there's going to be Thanksgiving-themed food items, too, before in the pregame, too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that's another really cool aspect of that one. So
turkey, hearing rumors about poutine. I'm hearing rumors about a pumpkin pie eating contest. So
great ideas.
What catches your eye here when talking about single games?
When we first brought up or went through 9 themes, I said it might be chalk to go with the concert kickoff, but that's still my answer. That's the one I'm looking forward to. It's not only the first game, I know it's going to be a big splash with the concert pregame. It was a great time last season. I don't know if being up by 40 at halftime had to do with that too, but
I think the results elevated it a little bit, but just the whole night. Yeah.
There's going to be a massive push to get fans in the seats for that game. I think the goal here is 40,000 fans for this game. So it's going to be a big night.
Talking to a couple of our ticketing fellas today, in the office, that's the number that they want to shoot for, and why not? I mean, got just over 30 in there, I think. 34,000, I think, officially announced. So no much different than the playoff game cracking the $30,000 fan mark and opening up the upper deck. That's the precedent has been set there. We want that upper deck open when we can. Season kickoff, concert kickoff, playoff game, knock on wood. Those are the games for that. So
also, not just based on the theme, but we're going to see Vernon Adams in week 1 with this team. And he's a motivated guy. He's been counted up by some people. He's motivated to let the league know that he can run this offense just to the capability it was running at last season. And that's another aspect I'm looking forward to in this kickoff event in not week 1, but our first
week
home
2.
game.
Yeah. So May 5th, putting those single game tickets on sale. Couple of pre-sales going out this week for partners and media folks, but that's going to be a great day on the calendar too. You're looking to snap up some tickets for a game or two. Buckle up and get ready. Lots of good things happening, like we said. Arrow Up, episode 1 of season 2, chronicles another passing of the torch. Even though Vernon was here for half of the season last year, started for 6 games, but
it became
really,
official.
You said he's going to be there from day one, and we talked to Michael Couture, big free agent addition, local boy, his excitement to be here. You want to check out this series again, episode 2 coming this Sunday, but episode 1 there for your viewing pleasure.
Yeah, and they're dropping every Sunday until week 1. It still kind of feels surreal saying that. That's right now the number one thing that makes me feel that football is right around the corner when you say that out loud. But this next Sunday is Lion Kings is coming out, and Lion Kings in my mind is content that the CFL has never really seen. I'm really excited for everybody to see it. It's really going to showcase the camaraderie this group has on offense, and it's the whole team. Like, there were defensive backs out there as well, but what Vernon Adams Jr. did to get all these guys out was just really cool, and you'll see these guys' personalities and just how fun of a group they are.
Again, camaraderie, tight-knit group. So that's up now for your viewing pleasure, all our social media channels. We've got written content, as always, Stephen Chang finishing up a piece on linebacker Josh Woods, another UCLA guy, right? We just talked to one in Stefan Flintoft, but Stephen talking to him. We will hear from Miles Fox as well, another D lineman looking to make a bigger role. Evan Tate, BCIT intern, helping you out with the IYP stuff and helping out with the writing. So plenty of player stories and features available at our website right now.
Yeah, and Steven had one more piece too about Matthew Betts and his offseason teaching phys ed at College Notre Dame. And Betts is a fun guy to be around. He's a high motor guy in the field, so I can only imagine what he's like in the phys ed class, teaching all the kids some exercise routines. So yeah, that was a cool story too.
Yeah, these players are human, and that's what you love most about them. Matthew Betts. Expect a big year out of him. I have a hunch. All right, that's going to do it for this week. We thank you all for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, leave a review. Check out previous episodes. Again, Neil McAvoy gives his thoughts on last week on how the roster is shaping up. We've got some cool alumni interviews on your favorite podcast platform. Bobby Singh, Solomon Elmimian, Paul McCallum, great XFL stories. We'll have to get back into the alumni series here before long when we can throughout the season. For Matt Baker and Nick Kowalski, we thank you, the listener, and we'll be back shortly next week.
Until next time.
First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast.